Okay, so in this tutorial, I'm going to cover how to draw the profile line for creating a template for the fabrication of your seat in the shop portion of the lab. So we're going to start with Rhino. So you're going to want to open up Rhino. The first thing is, because we're just drawing in 2D, we're just going to draw that profile line of the edge of the seat. So we actually don't need to be working in perspective or right or front. So I'm going to go ahead and maximize, just double click on top right up there, maximize and just draw in top view for now. I'm also going to turn off the grid just so you can see a little bit better what's going on. I'll just type in grid, turn off the axes. Okay, and then before I start working, I also want to double check my units. So down here at the bottom, where my cursor is, you can see that it says millimeters. So you always want to make sure you're working in the right units before you start to model and you end up having to fix stuff. So I'll just type in the command units and then go from the drop-down list and choose inches. Okay, and then we can start to draw our curve. So with both of the metal and the wood seat, you want to go ahead and start by drawing a line. So with both seats, you'll want to have a flat part of the seat that you can use to attach the frame or the legs of the stool to. So we're going to use the command line. I'm just going to click anywhere in the viewport to start my line, and then I'm going to type in the length of that line, so 6 inches, and press enter. And then what I also want to do is hold shift. So down at the bottom you can see this little button that says ortho. And ortho will cause my line to snap to a certain angle. So I want to hold shift to snap it and draw a horizontal line. Okay, and once we have our line, then we can go ahead and draw the curved edges of the seat. If you look at the pictures on the assignment sheet, you'll see what I mean by the edges. So I'm going to use the command arc. Type in arc. Now, like with any command in Rhino, whenever you enter it, you'll see that there are a few options for how you can draw with it. In this case, we're going to use the option for tangent. And what that will allow us to do is snap to our existing line and make sure that whatever arc we draw, it's coming off the end of that line tangent so that it forms a kind of continuous curve. Now, if you're not having, if your line isn't snapping, you got to make sure you go down here to where it says O snap, object snap. Turn that on, and then you'll want to turn on a couple of these different types of snap that I have on here at the bottom. So I'm just going to snap to the end of the line there, and you can see that it's drawing a circle tangent to my line at whatever size. And the next prompt is it's asking for a radius. So the radius of the ends of that seat are 18 inches. So I'm going to type in 18, press enter. And so now all we got to do is position the arc so it's where we want it. So we want the arc to go up, and we want it to be on the right end of the line. So I'm just going to hold my cursor towards the top right and click somewhere in the viewport. And then finally, it's going to ask us whether we want to draw the arc that way or that way. We want to draw it this way. So again, I'll click to the right. Okay, and there we have a big arc, 18 inches. That's tangent to our original line. The next step is going to be to mirror this line across our mirror the arc across our line. So I'm going to type in mirror. Press enter. I want to make sure that I have the option copy set to yes. And then I'm going to go ahead and snap to the midpoint of my line. So make sure you have that snap on. Oh, I'm sorry, I selected the wrong thing. Select the arc. Type mirror. Snap to that midpoint. And then again, I'm going to hold shift to use ortho. And I'm just going to draw a line straight up, reflected across the middle, perpendicular to my flat. Okay, so now I have a flat spot and I have the two arcs. What I need to do next is define the kind of limits of the geometry of the line. So in both cases, metal and wood, the size of the seat is 15 inches by 15 inches. Now, if you're drawing your wood seat, you're actually going to want to draw it at 16 inches. So just the line, we're going to draw at 16 inches. The reason for that is that when we go to make the seat out of wood, we're actually going to leave it a little bit bigger while we glue it, and then we'll cut it down once we have the shape set. So I'm going to do this by creating a rectangle. I'm just going to type in rectangle, press enter. Now once again, instead of starting with a corner of the rectangle, I'm going to use the center point, or a center. And again, I'm going to snap to the middle of that initial flat line. And then I can set the width of my rectangle. So I can use 16 if I'm making a wood template, and 15 if I'm making a steel template. So I'll type that number in, press enter, and now it wants me to set the depth. You can make it whatever you want, just draw it out so that the vertical edge of that rectangle completely intersects your arc. And now we can use that rectangle that's set to the right dimensions to trim the excess off of these arcs. So I'll select my rectangle, I'll type in the command trim. So when you're trimming stuff, you always want to select the cutting object first. You can also type trim without selecting anything, and then it'll ask you select cutting objects. Select the rectangle, press enter, and then trim the excess arcs. Okay, press enter, and there we go. Now we have our the profile of our seat, and it's trimmed at the right dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and delete my rectangle. Now this part will be for the wood people only. What I want to do is draw a straight line. So the way we're going to fabricate the wood seat is by making a plywood template of this profile line. And in order to do that, we need to give it a little bit of depth, a little bit of thickness. So I need to again draw a straight line. And what I actually want is to draw a line that intersects between the flat and the outside edge of my curved seat. So I'm going to go down here and press Smart Track, and then I'm going to hover my cursor over the end point of my flat until it turns gray or white like that. Okay, and now with Smart Track on, you can see it's like automatically helping us snap to a certain position relative to that point. Now I want to set another Smart Track point, so I'm going to hover over the end point of the line until it turns white. And then I can move my cursor down until I find the intersection between the projection of those 2 points. So I'll click, and that'll be the first point of my line. And then I'm going to hover over the other end point of my profile, and then move my cursor down. And you can see also it's going to say, you know, perpendicular or intersection. So make sure you have those object snaps turned on. Then I'll click at the other end. Okay, so now we've made a straight line that is the length of our profile. What I'm going to do is offset this line. So I'll type in offset. And we want to offset it towards the top or towards the inside of the curve. I want to set my distance. So I'm going to click on distance, type 2 or 2 inches, press enter. So now you can see it's offsetting my line by 2 inches. I'm also going to select this option where it says cap, and under cap I want to choose flat. So you can see right now that it's creating an offset line without any connection to the original line. When I choose flat, it's going to make an offset that's continuous with our original line. Excuse me. Okay. So now we've drawn the bottom of our profile. So that's one closed polyline. So I'm going to select the two, the two curved ends of the seat. Again, I'm going to type in trim, and I'm going to trim away the excess. Now it's going to trim, just the corner off. So we can either press enter, or we can also trim this duplicate line that we've just made. I'll trim that as well, press enter. So now when you click on this flat line, you should only see one pop up. If you have two, make sure you go ahead and delete one of them. Okay, and that's essentially it. So this would be, I'm going to select all those lines and join them. And this would actually be the profile that we would go ahead and print out if we were making the wood seat. And like I said, if you were making the metal seat, you would just have this profile line at 15 inches. Okay, so what I want to do next is print this out. So I need to, I can print it directly from Rhino. What I want to do first is go ahead and make a layout. And this is the best way to kind of set up prints when you want to print images and drawings from Rhino, directly from Rhino. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom where I see all my viewport tabs, and I'm going to click on the little plus and select New Layout. Okay, so one problem right away is that my units are still in millimeters for my layout. So I'm going to go ahead and click Cancel. Again, I'll type in units in the command line, and over here on the left you can see we have units. We have a units for our model and for our layout. So when I select layout, you can see I'm still in millimeters. I'm going to click the drop down and change to inches. Okay, and now when I go down here, click the plus and make a new layout, I should see that my units are in inches. Now under printer, I want to select Rhino PDF always. Rhino PDF tends to work better than Adobe PDF. I want to set the size of my paper to 11 by 17 or tabloid. I want to make sure I'm in landscape format. So I'm going to print like widthwise so I can fit that profile line. And then everything else I can leave. So it should automatically set the width and the height in the proper order. I'll click OK. And you can see that down at the bottom a new tab has been created. So a layout in Rhino is basically like a sheet of paper. So this is actually an 11 by 17 box that represents the sheet of paper we're going to print onto. And within the sheet of paper we can create what are called detail windows or detail views. So if I select this rectangle and I go to properties and look at the object, you can see under type it says detail view. Now a detail view is like a little portal into Rhino. So if I double click in that viewport, I can actually move around and I can change what I'm looking at. I can change what the scale is of what I'm looking at. And then when I'm done, I'll double click and exit. So I can lay out multiple drawings by setting up these windows that look into my model space. And I can make as many as I want on a single page. Now I actually just want one detail view, so we can leave it as default. But what's really important is to set the scale of this detail window. So again, if I select that detail window, I'm going to go to properties and I'm going to click up at the top. There's like those little buttons. I'll click on the one that says detail that looks like a sheet of paper. And you can see I can set the scale factor of this window. So I can set, like how big or small the stuff is that's in my model space will be represented on my paper. So what I want is 1:1. I want to print this profile line at exactly the scale that I'm going to cut out the template at or fabricate the seat at. So once I enter 1, you'll see that the scale has changed slightly. Now the other thing that I want to do is make sure that my line is thick enough or heavy enough so I can actually see it when I print it out. So up in the top left-hand corner of the viewport, I'll click on this drop-down, and I can go to an option where it says Print Preview. So in Rhino, for the most part, you'll want to define how things look when they print by setting up the properties of the layer that they're on. So what that means is, if I go back to my model space and I select this line, you can see in properties it's on the layer default, because that's my current layer by default. And I can set the line type. So in here I can choose to make it a solid line or different types of dashed line. I can choose the print color. So the square is the display color. That's what I see in my Rhino viewport. The diamond is the print color. That's what I'll see when I print it out. So I want it set to black. I'll just leave that on black. And then I can also set the print width. So I'm going to click on that. And from the print width menu, I'm going to go down to like 0.6. I want a pretty thick line so it's easy to see when I print. And now if I were to go back to my page 1, my layout, you can see if I zoom in that that line has a thickness, right? So that is going to show me more or less what this line is going to look like when I print it out. And you know, because that line is on the layer default, it's using that print thickness. Okay, so we should be good to go with that. Now I want to point you guys towards how to actually print. So the best way to kind of figure this out is just to use the CAPLA website. If I go to my internet browser and open a new tab, I'll go to capla.arizona.edu. So a lot of the information about the technology we have here, the printers, tools in the model lab. There's a lot of information that is really useful to students. I'm going to go up to the search bar and I'm going to type in software guidebook. And this is and then I'll click on student software. And about halfway down, you'll see School of Architecture Software Guidebook. And I'm going to click on that link right there. So this is actually a PDF document that I made that's available to anyone. And this, if we scroll down one page, you can see has a whole bunch of different tutorials for just kind of doing really basic things like getting information from one software to another, or setting up a file for the laser cutter or the CNC router. And I want to go over here to where it says print export. And what I'm doing is I'm printing directly from Rhino to hard copy, which means I'm printing to a printer out of a printer. Now, if you don't have the printers set up on your machine, or if you're not at school, what you want to do is go to Rhino Export Digital PDF. So, by the way, these are all buttons. You can click on them. That's why they are highlighted when you hover over them. And then take that PDF file to a computer at school and print it. Send it to one of the printers at school. So I'm going to click on Rhino Print Hard Copy. The first question it'll ask you is, do you have printers on this machine? Now, if you're on a school computer or a lab computer, the answer is yes. All those computers already have the printers installed. If you're on your own machine, the answer is, and you haven't done it yet, the answer is no. So if you click on no, another document will open, and this will walk you through how to install the printers we have available at CAPLA on your own machine so that you can just print directly from your own machine. I highly recommend doing it. It's a lot easier. It makes life a lot easier. So just follow those directions and you'll be able to install printers on your own machine. Now we'll close out of that window. So let's assume I've done that already. I'll click on yes. And this is going to explain for you a couple of important things to do when you're printing from Rhino. So just go ahead and follow those instructions. Now, you can also look at information for what printers are available at the College of Architecture. If you go back and just search for student printing and scroll down to tools and resources and click here where it says printing and scanning. So this page will show you kind of all the printers that you have available to you, and their names are pretty self-explanatory. So there's 2 is the floor it's on, east is the east or west building, black and white or color, obviously that means you can print to black and white or color. And you also want to make sure that you're printing to a printer that has the paper size that you need. So we're probably going to have you print, you'll probably want to print to 2 west black and white. Sorry, where is that? 2 west black and white right there. So it's a small format. You can do 11 by 17. Because it's black and white, you're going to save money when you print, so that you can see the prices for black and white are much different than the prices for color. So you want to go ahead and print to that color, printer. If you're ever confused about which printer to use, just go back to this page and you can figure it out. Okay. Now, I don't have actually the printers installed on my machine, but just to show you as well how to deal with the print dialog. So I could type in the command print. Now under destination, if I'm printing to PDF, I would choose Rhino PDF, not Adobe. If you've installed the printers, you should also see your printers appear here. So that's where you could print directly to that printer. In this case, we're going to go ahead and change it to vector output because we're printing lines. We want the paper size set to our layout size, 11 by 17. We can change this to black and white. So that's the destination. If we go to view and output, the other thing we want to double check again is that the print scale is set 1:1. So because we're printing a layout, we always want to be printing 1:1, right? Because we've already scaled our drawing in our detail view. But just double check that that is set to 1:1 so that you don't end up printing a profile at some weird scale and messing up. Okay, and then everything else should be good to go. So when you're done setting all that up, you just go ahead and click print. Either save the file somewhere or send it to the printer. And then when you've sent it to the printer, then you can actually go ahead and open up the software called PaperCut. So the next page in the PDF will be, what would you like to do next? Click print, and this will allow you to log into PaperCut. This will only work when you're on the school computers or when you're at the school on the school internet. So that won't work for me right now, but you'll go ahead and click print, and then you should be good to go. Okay, that should conclude this tutorial. So sign off.